Pre-qualifying is underway at the Nurburgring for the GT World Challenge Europe, powered by AWS. It's our second Endurance Cup event of the season, and despite earlier fears, the track remains dry. We've not yet had any rain, and we've got 48 cars in the entry, all of which go out for another 90 minutes of, if you prefer, free practice 2, or as it's officially titled, pre-qualifying, to get the cars into the qualifying session itself later on in the afternoon. The earlier free practice was topped by Raffaele Marciello with the Mercedes, and this another opportunity for the teams to iron out any problems, to get set up absolutely right, ready for qualifying this evening, the 3 parts of qualifying this evening, and then we are in business for a 6-hour race tomorrow. It is all go here at the Nurburgring. David Addison and John Watson trackside, and John, they're all back out, and this is getting busy already.
Busy circuit, busy drivers, all working their way down bit by bit. It's the Porsche of Prenning, quickest so far, but it's still a second away from the time we saw this morning from stunning lap by Raffaele Marciello. Nevertheless, it's a long way to go in this session. Another hour, 23 minutes. Jules Gounon in the K-Pax Bentley is currently 9th. Comes across the line. Where did he finish up? Finishes up 5th. So a small improvement for Gounon, a lap of 1:56.217. Just to have a look back and see what Gounon did in the Bentley earlier this morning. Well, it's so far down the timing and scoring, I can't find it, but it's every lap, every car going to go out. Expect to see change. Kelvin Vandalinder, winner, of course, in the round 3-hour race in Imola earlier this season, along with Ralph and Icon, first time an Icon in the Audi. But a very, very strong driver pairing. Who's that kicking up the dust? Was that the Bentley, or was that... So there was 14. Okay, it was the Lambo of Il Frey. Kicked up a whole load of dust. Dries van Thor, by the way, just gone fast. Second quickest in the 32 Audi. About 1:56.057. That's a second and a bit behind the current Porsche.
If that was the Emil Frey Lamborghini doing funny things, it was, I think, Giacomo Altway at the wheel of it, but got away with that, seemingly. So what are we looking for out of this session, then? We're not really looking necessarily at lap times, because it doesn't affect the grid, but it does give us an idea of who is quick, how BOP might be working, and what to anticipate for qualifying, John.
Well, if you take this morning's situation, a lot of very heavy, thick, dense, moist air. Some teams probably would have run a new tyre. They found out what the conditions were like. Now, when we go into this evening's qualifying sessions, which will begin around 7:10 this evening, the air will be different to where we are right now. It's coming up to 1:45 in the afternoon at Nurburgring. So the conditions are not going to get any better in terms of the ambient temperature, the track temperature, the air density. Wipers just coming up into the chicane. Now, I can't imagine that was for flies.
Well, the spots of rain have been threatened for ages, haven't they? So
spot the spots, as they say.
Spot the spots, exactly. Well, they might be here. This is where we'll have to ask Gemma. She's out in the elements in the pit lane.
So following Kelvin Vandalinder here, Audi comes into view. So Audi 32 goes across the line, and to record a meaningful... Oh, it's gone, that's the third quickest now. It was second, gone third quickest. There's a car. Marcus Winkelhock, when he was behind the wheel, still behind the wheel, currently in 9th position. Always somebody who is capable of pulling a performance out of an Audi.
The Nürburgring returning to the Endurance Cup. It's had a sprint round for the last 3 seasons, but it is a welcome return to the endurance calendar. Very fine drops, nothing much is Gemma's report about rain from the pits. We might be able to change that yet, Gemma.
That might be in the pit lane.
Yes,
but remember, there is a slight elevation here at the this is not the Nordschleife, this is the Grand Prix circuit. But it does descend all the way down, as we're following now. Marcus Winkelhock all the way down to turn 8 at the bottom of the hill, bottom of the circuit. So, as is the norm at Nürburgring, you get 4 seasons in the space of 1 corner, let alone 1 lap.
And it can change any moment, as people that have raced here, been here for years, will tell you the 24 hours often affected, that's in May, by rain or snow even, or whatever you go to have. So Winkelhock on track. Thomas Priming's Porsche, another of the Porsche juniors, he's done the best lap time thus far. Porsche number 40, the GPX Racing, or one of the two GPX Racing Porsches. 48 cars have ventured out, which would suggest that the Stuart Hall 33 Audi has been repaired after what we thought was a brake issue in the earlier session. That might be Gemma's first task, actually, to see if she can find Stuart Hall from that team, or anybody from that car, and find out exactly what it was that pitched it off the road in the earlier session. Because it went off with some speed, did it not? It
did. It looked as if it was an incident that was not directly involving the driver. Just out of curiosity, looking down at the timing and scoring from a little earlier in the morning, the car that is currently quickest overall, the number 40 Porsche, Roman Dumas and Olsen and Preining, did a 156.8. So far it's done a 155.0, so it's picked up 1.8 seconds.
Wet. Track is declared wet.
And that would indicate to me, just had a message of course saying the track is now a wet track. There is clearly something significantly better on that Porsche number 40 than they had this morning.
Yeah.
Surprised that it probably is a set of fresher rubber.
Well, you might be right.
It's amazing just what a brand new set or a very little used set can make to a lap around the Nurburgring. But if the rain is significant, and we're giving a warning, a visual warning on the start-finish line, that lights now must be lit up because it is declared a wet track.
There you can see the wipers on. The voice you heard a moment ago was that of Alain Adon, who is the race director. So it might only be spots of rain in the pit lane, but as John was predicting, it's getting wet elsewhere.
Yeah, it's the first part of the circuit was coming up into the final chicane.
Track is declared wet. Track is declared wet.
So Alain Adon reminding the teams, or making that point to them again. Right, Simona de Silvestro comes up towards the line. Wiper on.
Unfortunate, she goes out for the run, gets the first shot on the 98 Porsche, and of course the track is now declared wet when you can't see the rain on the circuit. You can certainly see it on the windscreen. So coming through turn 2, and the level of grip will be slowly, probably in some corners maybe more quickly than others, disappearing. For Simona, she just has to tread carefully. The last time she did a lap, maybe the conditions are slightly different. And when you're on slick tyres, although the slick tyre will be up to racing temperature, into turn 5. Quite a lot of work on the wheel just to keep the Porsche balanced. You can see a lot of understeer turning into turn 6. Missed the apex, now down the hill through turn 7. So it's sort of an Irish mist rain. It's not the normal Nurburgring where you have to get the bailers out. Up the hill out of turn 8. And here the rain is a lot less. In fact, the wiper barely being required. So it is the usual story here at Nurburgring. You get different kinds of weather at different sections of the circuit. So it seems that the higher part of the racetrack, but that final chicane into the final turn, is the highest part on this Grand Prix circuit. So now she'll be going back into a bit of the racetrack that is probably marginally wetter than it was once again that one lap ago.
I was going to say it's drier here. There's less on the windscreen, isn't there, compared to the start of the lap?
Wait and see what happens when it gets to the chicane.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's certainly very mild in terms of the rainfall. So Simona de Silvestro decides, having done a run of, well, how many laps has she done? She's done 6 laps, I think it is. So she's in the pit lane.
So it's greasy more than anything at certain parts. The one thing we have just discovered is it's not consistent all the way around, the amount of drizzle.
Fred Verviche, he'll not even know it's raining.
Yeah.
Fred just gets in. He is the most on-looking like racing driver I've ever seen. He could be a scholar. You know, one of those brain boxes that teaches us how to do things.
Yes.
Except commentate.
Well, whether it's a GT car or a front-wheel drive touring car Audi, he can deliver. And Fred Verviche dominated the opening stint, remember, in our last Endurance Cup race at Imola.
Yeah.
Parallel parking in the pits was a bit hit and miss, but that's why they lost time and lost the lead. Right now, the Attempto car is 12th. Just had the team boss, Arkin Arca, in the previous race here, actually, the Lamborghini Super Trofeo race. 48 cars, they're all on track. So everybody venturing out at one point into the session. They've all been out, set a time.
I suspect also that most teams have got meteorologists either attached to the team or they're locked into weather apps. So they would have been aware that there is a likely weather pattern change about to descend onto the Nurburgring. So ideally, get out and use the dry track time as best possible. Don't know what's going to be the weather for tonight, because that will be 7 o'clock, so we're now coming up to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So it'll be another 4.5, just under 5 hours before, by the time this session finishes, before they go back out onto track. But they need to get the information as much as possible as to what track conditions are like, how much have they changed, what's changed about them. A car that might have been a beautifully balanced car this morning might suddenly have picked up that little bit of very irritating and frustrating understeer, the bane of every racing driver. The only thing that's worse than the bane of understeer is the fear of oversteer.
Yes.
And ultimately, every racing driver's biggest fear is oversteer. It's hard to control, and if it snaps, then you're a little bit of a passenger. And a bit in the way we saw this morning when Stuart Hall went off, and we still haven't yet found the cause for that incident. But certainly the car did snap very quickly, and he went in backwards pretty quickly as well.
He did indeed. The good thing is it is repaired, it's on track. We've just got Nigrel Pedersen going up to second in the dynamic Porsche. Well, there is the car. It might not look pretty.
Oh, I like that. I like that's very, very arty. I like a big tyre smear down the side of a car. You could pay somebody a fortune to come up with something not as good as that. But the priority was, pretty isn't why we're here.
No, exactly.
Performance is why we're here.
Well, the car is a runner. They can worry about the livery overnight, can't they? Right now, they want that to get the laps in. So Rick Brokers was the driver behind the wheel at the start, and he has just taken it back out again. He didn't seem to do many laps in the earlier session. There's the car that's fastest then. It's Gulf colours adorning the Porsche. Thomas Preining did the time. Romain Dumas is now behind the wheel.
Interestingly, it's the Dynamic Motorsport Porsche that's now gone second quickest by just under half a second. And Mikael Pedersen behind the wheel. Sandy Mitchell third in the Lamborghini, the Barwell Lamborghini. Two Porsches, front row lockout. I'll buy that now.
Sandy Mitchell again illustrating his pace. That's a Silver Cup car and just goes very, very quickly in Sandy's hands. Shares the Barwell run Lamborghini with Rob Collard and Leo Machitsky. So third it is. So it's Dumas, Pedersen, Mitchell, Bogoslawski, Dries Van Thor fifth, Daniel Alleman sixth at the moment, as their wiper on the 188 Aston of Chris Goodwin heads towards us, chased by Romain Dumas. So the Porsche with that Targa Florio retro livery heads up the hill, being chased by Jules Gounon by the look of it in the Bentley. Alex Buncombe back as a Bentley boy this weekend. Good to see Alex returning to the championship for K-Pax. And it is Alex that started more Endurance Cup races than anybody else, so this will be his 43rd in the championship's history.
And he's such a young man.
Yes.
So there you can see the straight line performance, Porsche v Bentley, not a mile an hour between the two cars. Anything is the gain that you might get from any slipstream coming down into turn one. So why is 32 back in the garage, bonned up?
It's Dries Van Thor's car, isn't it?
A roll bar change or something more. That's Dries Van Thor, obviously. But there's something being done to the car that, and Dries Van Thor was, he was the driver that started the session. Clearly he wasn't happy, and that's the thing I was mentioning. Between the two sessions, the fine-tuning goes on as the consequence of the different time of the day. A lot more rubber has gone down from all the support events. There's Renault going on, there's GT4, there's been Lamborghini Super Trofeo. Track has changed.
Yeah.
It's a living thing.
So there, the red, white and blue SMP Racing colours carried by Davide Rigon in the 72 Ferrari. He was the best of the Ferrari drivers this morning. The Ferrari's struggling for front-end grip. At the moment, James Collado is the best of the Ferrari pedallers by the look of it. Davide Rigon will get on with the job, that's for sure.
Indeed. And still slightly perplexed as to what was causing the Ferrari's issue, lack of grip. But I suspect it was to do with the ambient temperature, track temperature. Slightly better now than it was, as we mentioned earlier in the morning. So hopefully we'll see something more from James Collado and Davide Rigon. Rigon currently 23rd, and Collado up in 18th. You just see there, they're actually coming through turn 12, a full four-wheel slide from the Ferrari as it exited out of that corner. So maybe the issue that they had this morning is still fundamentally there, that the overall bite, the grip that they were expecting hasn't come. So at the exit of 12, one of the quicker corners here at Nurburgring. So it comes out of the final turn, comes across start-finish line. Where does he go? He's up to 18th place. So an improvement for Rigon, puts him one place ahead of James Collado in the sister car, or a sister car.
So, right now, a 55.0 is the best lap time set by the Porsche of Romain Dumas. This morning, it was a 54.6, so they're not far off it.
No, they're getting there. You know, you can't stop the Barwell Motorsport boys, can you?
No.
Because Frederick Schoendorf has gone fourth quickest.
Behind his teammate.
They're only a silver entry. They're not meant to be embarrassing all these pros. Great effort by the team.
It is. Frederick Schoendorf then, sharing with Alex McDowell and Patrick Kuyler. So, yes, you've got the Pro-Am entry third and the silver fourth. It's an excellent effort, that. James Poole getting on with the job in his first outing for Garage 59 in number 159 with Andrew Watson and Valentin Asclot, who's busy in GT4 as well this weekend. Davide Rigon last time up to 18th. Kelvin Vandalinder, winner at Imola, up to 10th. Make that down to 11th because Rino Mastronardi has just gone 6th in the green Rinaldi Racing Ferrari, number 488 now.
Well, that's promising. Ferrari now in the top 6.
Yeah.
So they've done something to their car to give it a bit more bite and therefore generate a bit more tire. Oh, and again, you can see coming out of turn 12, the Aston Martin, the back end, that very abrupt snap. And that is one of the areas where the Aston is slightly more tricky than other cars. One of the cures for it, I think you mentioned this even in Imola, is you pile on a whole load of negative camber at the rear. But the problem of doing that, certainly in circuits where ambient and track temperature is high, is you load up the inside shoulder of your Pirelli tire and then tends to cause overheating and then causes a problem with your rear tires. So you've got to stand them up more upright, but in these temperatures here at Nürburgring, you might actually get away with a bit more rear camber.
Well, we're approaching the end of the first third of these 90 minutes, so not far off that now. Lots of people heading for the pit lane. Slowest in the session, number 44, which is Christian Hook in the car he shares with Nico Bastien and Florian Scholz of the Mercedes.
And that ought to be a pretty quick car.
In Nico Bastien's hands, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Nico's pretty quick in pretty much anything. So, has the racetrack had the wet track message been rescinded, which is still in place?
Yeah, once it's declared wet, it's wet. It gives the drivers
the options,
the choice, and it means it's up to you to sort things out. We're not going to stop it if it rains.
And they have to have the headlights on, as we see there.
Dennis Lin's gone second now, number 63 Lamborghini, 155.3, so 3 tenths back on Dumas. And Julian Andlauer, briefly, up to 7th fastest as well in the other Porsche, 55.968. So times are improving bit by bit. Ricky Collard, having his first outing for the FFF racing team, currently 38th. Ricky thrown in with Baptiste Moulin and Jonathan Cicotto, who's just been out in the earlier Lamborghini Super Trofeo race.
Interesting to see if son and dad were to start on the same row of the grid. Who would concede if that's what they had to do? Who would give in first? Would dad give in to son or son give in to dad? Or would they both go off?
I think Rob would tell you, Dad would tell you that he'd be ahead on the grid anyway, so it wouldn't be a problem.
I'm saying if they were beside each other.
Yeah. Rob's out.
I know he might say, oh, I'm going to blow my son away. I'm saying if they were side by side on the grid, who would concede into turn one? you know Rob Pollard very well.
It'd be a very interesting fight because I can't really see either of them giving way particularly. Who's on the inside?
Porsche.
So Romain Dumas is the quickest. Dennis Lind is second. Mikkel Pedersen is third. Rob Collard taking over the Sandy Mitchell time is shown as being fourth. Then Schandorf, Fraga, Lucas Stoltz up to seventh. There is Frederick Schandorf. Let's just see what this lap is going to be. He's down in sectors and then he bails. So Lucas Stoltz, seventh in the number 4 Mercedes. That was a car that wasn't getting terribly excitable in the free practice session this morning.
Started off strongly, but then just faded away. It's almost a repeat of what we had this morning. Basically, drivers going out in rotation, doing a run of laps, coming back in again, and then whatever other technical changes they can come up with. I wonder whether anybody towards the end of this session, let's say in about another 45 minutes, would take the punt and put on a set of rubber, brand new set of rubber, just to see where they are. We saw, I think, Marcello do that first thing this morning. That's why he did that time of 1:54.675, and nobody really got within half a second of it. And we're still the best part of 0.6 of a second away. Romain Dumas in the 40 Porsche. This is the Rover Racing.
Julien Andlauer, another graduate from the One Make Porsche Championships, Carrera Cup France, and then Super Cup. Very, very talented Porsche peddler, and he comes downhill 9th fastest, the Rover Racing car. Accelerating now uphill once more, and Lucas Stoltz continues to impress with the Mercedes. He's now got himself to 5th.
Certainly pretty quick up the hill, up into turn 11, just uses the momentum to slide past sister Porsche. Of course, and sort of in a, not an ironic way, but for teams that are entering 24 Hours of Spa, this is the last race they're going to have prior to going to Spa-Francorchamps. And because it's in the general location of the circuit, and because it's a very late race this year because of all the medical issues, it's an opportunity for teams to get a sense of where we are, what we need to do, run through drivers we may choose to run through. It's almost like a giant test.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, it's a race, it's a 6-hour race, and it's an important event, but a lot of it will be teams experimenting.
There's the new KCMG Porsche, and we've got a Ferrari second. James Collado has just gone second in the Ferrari number 51. Right, Stuart Hall was in the wars this morning, and not only is he fit and well, he's with Gemma Scott to tell us all about it.
Stuart, great to see you looking fit and well after your accident this morning. What happened?
Looks like we had a brake failure into turn 1. Quite nasty, bit sore. We're just trying to analyse what happened and what caused it. Looks like there might be something to do with the master cylinder. But you know, these things happen. That's the sport. WRT are the best team in the business. They've got the car back out for pre-qualifying. I had a quick trip to hospital to sort of make sure nothing was broken. But you know, the best remedy is to get back in the car and do some laps. So you know, that's what we plan to do.
Well, have a great rest of the session. Thank you very much.
So Stuart Hall, as he said, a little bit sore. It was. I'd like to know the speed at which he went off, because it seemed that the car was at unabated speed. It didn't brake, clearly. The gravel didn't do much other than sort of launch it to a degree. It skipped over the top of the gravel.
Well, I can entirely sympathise. You know, I went head over heels in the kitchen the other evening. And I mean, OK, I didn't end up in a tyre bale, but I'm still walking wounded, you know.
You're a trooper, John. You made it here.
I came here. I'm doing my work.
Absolutely.
You know, didn't have to take the trip to the hospital and all that, but there we are.
And Stuart will do his, bruises and all. He'll be put into the car, and it's good to have him back racing. We've not seen very much of Stuart over the last few years. Started off in single-seaters in the UK. His father, Pete Hall, mainstay of Production Saloon and then the British Touring Car Championship for many, many seasons in the 70s and 80s through ICS, Industrial Control Services, Pete's company. And Stuart now part of the Royal Goethe Rothgo collection in terms of looking after cars and developing Junior Goethe, Benji Goethe, as a driver.
It's never nice getting into a car having had the last time you sat in it, when you put your foot on the brake, the pedal, whatever it did, whether it went to the floor or not. There's two things the driver fears, but he has no control over. One is a throttle sticking, and that's pretty horrible. The second thing is a brake failure, and you're now always braking. Okay, you may have a couple of meters of margin, but when that failure happens, everything speeds up at such a rate. And fortunately, the incident, the damage was an impact that went through the car, and obviously Stuart was taken off to have a check, and everything is perfectly fine. But it's, you know, you've got to get back in the car, rebuild your confidence, and with electronic controls over braking, whether it was an ABS issue or whether it was another issue Stuart didn't allude to, you know, when you've purely got a mechanical brake, there's really the brake pedal, the master cylinders, and the hoses that can go wrong. There were no electronics in the good old days, Dave. You know, the good old days, Dave.
All these little gizmos on the cars now. There's 44 Mercedes. That's Christian Hook at the wheel. It's gained one place within the classification against Jürgen Herring's Porsche. So Christian Hook heads into the Ravenel curve through the Bilstein corner, climbs the brow, plunges off down the hill again.
James Collado, we missed it. He's gone second quickest.
No, I did say that.
I missed it.
He did
I was supposed to be gabbling on about bits and pieces.
He did that just before we threw to Gemma to talk to Stuart Hall, but it's a good effort, that.
That's
He's
a
only
very
a
good
10th
effort.
off priming.
Yeah.
And also, Bertolini in 52 is 5th, and Pierre Eret in the Rinaldi Ferrari is 10th.
Well, that's probably the performance of the session so far, Pierre Eret, with respect. Because all the drivers ahead of him are what I would describe as, you know, professional drivers.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's his time or Mastronardi's time, but the car is
I
up
think it might
there.
be Mastronardi, actually.
The disappointing Ferrari suddenly becomes Davide Rigon, who's only 32nd.
And the car we did see sliding around coming out of turn 12.
Yeah.
Christian Hook, personal best, wow, in sectors 1 and 2, so currently 47th out of 48. Horrible to say it that way, it makes it really sound mean.
Yeah.
So it comes out of final turn, over start finish line, and it's an improvement in time but not position.
Indeed so. So 59.125 is a better lap time, but that's the important thing. He's getting his pace better and better all the time. 21 Porsche, good to go. The KCMG car, the Hong Kong team. Who's it going to be that takes that car out again? Let's try and work it out from what we've had thus far. It was Alexandre Imperatori, wasn't it, that we were last suggested behind the wheel? And Imperatori is still shown as being behind the wheel of it. Right, that's Bertolini, he's 5th.
Yeah. So what have the Ferrari runners, not what have the Ferrari runners changed? Davide Rigon, by the way, has just gone 6th quickest.
Ah, okay.
It just popped up as we were speaking about Ferraris. So the lead Ferrari is still the 51. Nicholas Nielsen behind the wheel, but James Collado was the driver that established the time. So Ferrari is very much back at the races. 77, would you believe it? You know, an old touring car driver out having a busman's holiday here at Nurburgring goes 7th quickest, and little Ricky in the similar Lamborghini, the 555, only 19th.
Yeah, come on, Ricky, you can't have your dad doing this to you. He's getting up the order, but bit by bit. Of course, it's the first time he's driven that car, whereas Rob races the Lamborghini both in Europe and in British GT. That'll be Ricky's excuse, at least. So here, Bertolini down in the first sector, but we know that he's going to be quick in his stint. He's a very, very accomplished driver and, of course, a real expert in these cars nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, he's literally a part of the Ferrari family for so many years. And I've known Andrea since way back well, 12 more years ago. And he was very much involved in the project at that particular time.
Right, driver change at Rover to swap pedallers around.
Yes, Nona getting out of the car. So that car currently 29th, her best time on 56.551. So she'll go away and have a little debrief.
And there is the Tempesta Racing Ferrari, which was Cheever driven at the start. Still is Edward Cheever behind the wheel of it. He seems to have done more miles in that than anybody today.
He's a busy boy, that's
Yeah.
for sure. That car's on a lot of laps, and Eddie Cheever Jr.'s been the man who's done a lot of the laps in it.
So this is the view. Hard at work, and now down the hill to turn 8.
Yep. All you do is just get your car placement and your braking points sorted out. And there you can see foot hits the throttle pedal. Can't go any further, Eddie. That's it. Left foot on the brake, a big pedal. Breathes it up through the Schumacher S. Is just almost rolling his foot off and on the brake pedal. Then a big brake will come up as he come up into turn 11. There we go. And then back on the throttle, a bit of a off and on just to settle the car. Back, touch the brakes before you turn into turn 12. Then come on, get that pedal to the metal, Eddie Cheever, the third. Now holds it wide open through the curve of turn 13 all the way up to the big brake. Second really big brake on this racetrack. Maybe the third one is, because turn 8 is one of those as well. And Eddie Cheever, the third, is going to complete his run.
In he comes, job done. Still a very unsettled order with cars out of position, but Raffaele Marciello is back behind the wheel of number 88, the car that topped the times this morning.
I mean, Rick I was going to say Rick Brockers, who's just, by the way, popped up into 8th place in the Audi. But Raffaele has just got so much ability, so much confidence. I mean, he could have raced a chariot and win that, couldn't he? And being an Italian chariot, Roman games and all that sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
You got it, did you?
I was there, and I can't disagree, because the guy
I tell you
is
what,
a
even
star.
Ben Hur would have been beaten by Raffaele Marciello.
He's doing well for his age then, Raffaele.
So is Ben Hur.
Well, that's true. 11th he is at the moment, but that car could go top.
A lot of gravel just been kicked up at the bottom of turn 6 onto the track. Somebody obviously dropping a wheel off the outside of the edge of the corner.
So Raffaele Marciello's got the road to himself at the moment. Where are we up to? 51 minutes to go, so not yet at the halfway point. Way up the curve there. The curve there really is part of the racing line, isn't it?
Yeah, but as long as you don't go too far, that will be a couple of drivers have been lap times excluded because of abuse at the exit of turn 11. Raffaele Marciello, or the car, because it wasn't Marciello, I think, that established the time, currently in 11th, the time 1:55.7, 1.3 seconds slower than this car did this morning with Raffaele behind the wheel. This lap ain't going to get anywhere near that, because again it's on a set of rubber that's done a number of laps. But just look at the contempt, the way he just throws the car up the curb, turns it into turn 16, just nails it. Really exciting racing driver to watch. Marciello is, I was going to say, I thought he has lost a place to Fabian Schiller in the 100 Mercedes, so that's the get speed with Maxi Book. Where's Maxi Book gone? He's sort of vanished in a sense. I mean, Maxi was the star of Mercedes for so many seasons, and it's as if he's, I don't know what to say.
His stock has waned a bit, hasn't it? For some reason, he's not in the plum drive anymore. Still quick, but there number 69, Rob Bell, champion and a winner of the endurance race here in years past as well.
2015.
So, from where was he on the grid? 24th or somewhere.
Yeah, he started
remote.
the most distant, or the lowest starting position of any race winner in the series. I think it was 24th indeed. I mean, in British GT, for example, the Mclaren is right at the head of the field in terms of out-and-out pace. There's no obvious difference in regulations between the two championships, are there? Both run by the same operation.
Absolutely, yep. Pirelli tyres in both, but no, I think this will be a car that's there or thereabouts after 6 hours. Rob, vastly experienced driver, great development driver as well. So right now, 21st is Rob Bell, but he improved on his last lap, chipping his way up the order.
So waiting to get no indication of any improvements. You know, oh, Raffaele, what was that all about then? Sneaking one little off the racetrack to think we wouldn't see you. You know, waking up, Raffaele. Waking up there, Raffaele. We're on your case.
He's practicing for the 24 hours, thinking of going left onto the Nordschleife. Because that's in, what, 3 weeks' time. Down he comes into the right-hander of the Mercedes arena, gets past the Tempest racing Ferrari that's just returned to the session. So what was all this about, Raffaele?
Well, he had more chance of being strong. I mean, he was so never going to make the exit of the corner. He got it all wrong mid-chicane, and he was where he should have been. He should have been 30, 40 metres up the track to be able to avoid running. Anyway, amusing to watch.
He doesn't do it often, does he, in fairness to him, but...
he has his moments, though. He does have moments.
He does.
A rush of blood to the head seems to take over control over his brain.
There was a moment, at least. 12 he is. Right, who else is getting on with the job? We've had that lull now, haven't we?
So where's the 63 Lamb? Oh, it's gone third. Andrea Caldarelli.
Yeah, Dennis Lynn got it second, didn't he? Caldarelli we've not really seen much of all day, but the champion of sprint, endurance and overall last year, British GT race winner from last month, first visit to Donington, first visit to the championship, wins, first time out, first Italian to win in British GT, another box ticked. And Andrea Caldarelli is third, or the car is third fastest in this session.
So still the number 40 Porsche, Roman Dumas. Oh, Thomas Prini, I think, set the time. And that time still the best part of 6/10 of a second away from the time that was set by Marcello this morning. Look again, I keep referring to the way that these FFF Racing Lamborghinis, the setup that they developed last year, which enables the driver to get the front of the car into the corner without upsetting the balance of the car. And that was a good example of just how well this team go about getting their preparation.
Yes, we don't have Grasser anymore, but the Emil Frey Lamborghini, I think, is going to be a dark horse. Giacomo Altway at the wheel of it, he's just got it up into 13th. So FFF Racing Team has become the, underline it, Lamborghini team. But Emil Frey, having won in International GT Open last year, also becoming a very accomplished squad as well. So what can Caldarelli do on this lap? It's more of a race setup type of lap, isn't it, rather than a Banzai qualifying effort. But the car has got good pace now.
It's a naturally quick car. It looks good coming off turn 16. Look to see what the time was.
56. So about a second down. But if they're working on race pace, they want a car that's going to be quick and consistent all the way through.
You need a car also that's it's this thing called balance, and part of the benefit of balance is that you don't destroy your tires. And I suspect that FFF Racing are fully aware, and one of the benefits of the way that they've got their car set up is that it is probably pretty gentle over the duration of roughly an hour stint between driver changes on its Pirelli tires.
Now there's a car that's had quite a relative few number of laps in the session. Dries van Voor's Skechers Audi, the WRT car.
Did you notice, were those fresh tires just a few laps on them, or were they maybe more than a few laps on them?
Well, that's slicker tires going on.
You couldn't see the indents in the tread to tell how much rubber was left, could you? I couldn't, certainly.
There's the spectacularly liveried Voss Conrad Onslow Cole car. Raymond Vos shown, but the team's saying it's actually Martin Conrad at the wheel. It's a transponder glitch, so Martin Conrad at the wheel.
Well, there is an illustration of the frustration. You've got a car which its lap times are currently its 41st, being pursued by, is that the 163 Lamborghini?
Yeah,
it is. That's the Emil Frey
car.
And a car that is quicker in a lap. You can see the headlights are burning a hole in the back of the Mercedes. But how do you get through? Where do you find a way through? So he's done the right thing. Backed off. Give yourself a bit of free air, then start all over again. Sacrifice the remains of this lap. There's no point pursuing the fumes coming from the Mercedes. It's not going to take you anywhere. So back off, get clear track and reset.
So the Ram Racing Mercedes heading up towards the end of the lap. The KCMG Porsche has just been an improver. And also out of nowhere, number 14.
Yes.
The Emil Frey Lamborghini in the hands now of Ricardo Feller, up to 11th fastest. That's the car that Emil Frey runs for Norbert Siedler and Mikael Granio, as well as Ricardo Feller. Right, here is Martin Conrad up towards the end of the lap, but he's down in sectors here, but of course, relatively inexperienced driver, still learning about all of this.
Looking down the top 10, there's only one Audi currently in the top 10. That's the Rick Brooker's car, Stuart Hall, Benjamin Gotha. And then the next Audi up is Christopher Hasse in 20th, Dries van Thor, WRT Audi 21st, Kelvin Vandalinder, WRT Audi 25th, and Attempter Racing Matteo Derudi 26th. Now those cars were at the sharp end this morning. They haven't just lost pace, but just clearly being economical with the rubber and working through what they've got. So here is the 14th place Lamborghini Alto. Makes its way through, so Giacomo Alto or Altoe? Alto. There's no
Altoe.
Altoe. Where's the thing on the top of the E then?
It should be there, but there is in real world.
Oh, there is no way. Okay,
yeah.
It's Altoe. Okay.
Giacomo Altoe, whose family owns the Adria circuit at Adria, and he is a Super Trofeo Europe champion, World Final champion, International GT Open champion, and the young Italian driver, very competitive indeed. But he's hustling this car along, isn't he? That is for sure.
He's not taking too many prisoners. Just watch the exit to see if the Lamborghini looks much better there than some of the other brands we've seen. Ferrari initially was moving around, the Aston was moving around. On the exit of turn 12, the Lambos look like they've got a good aero front to rear balance, and the car looked pretty well balanced and a reasonable level of grip. Again, coming through the final chicane, or this chicane, I suppose you have to say there is only one chicane. Whether it's the first or the final, it's both.
It's the, yeah. 111 Mercedes, Patrick Krupinski, black and orange warning flag, mechanical warning flag for no lights working or being switched on. So the team being told about that, to get that sorted out.
So the KCMG Porsche had Josh Burke, small improvement up to 31st, one place up ahead of Jerome Blakemole. Well, he'll remember that moment. So will Matt Campbell, who's also in 33rd position. Three Porsches in 30th, 1st, 2nd and 3rd.
Dries van Thor, absolute best, personal best, and he goes top. Dries van Thor has just done a 1:54.990, an absolute best and 2 personals. I was about to say Audi wasn't really sparkling in this, with Kelvin Vandalinder only being 19th, for example, but Dries van Thor, boom, right to the top.
Just what I said when I pointed out that all the Audis, the best Audi had been in 8th place, which was Gotha. Now Dries van Thor, probably with a fresh set of Pirelli tyres, has gone out, nailed it. Only driver who's managed to get in to the 114-second per lap, but still half a second away from the Mercedes, the time that was recorded this morning by Marcello. But that is much more representative of Dries van Thor of WRT Audi, the Audi in general. And I wonder how long it'll be before Kelvin Vandalinder in the 31 or Matteo Drudi in the 66 find themselves. Well, I also forgot about our good friend Marcus Winkelhoff before they start piling into the top 10.
Yeah, the further down the order you look, the more competitive cars you find, and you think, well, that should be up there, that should be up there. Here's another one.
35th, what's Christian Engelhardt doing down there? Maybe he's looking down in the cockpit to check something.
Over the timing line he comes, 1.6 seconds down on the initial top time, but with the wipers on the Bentley ahead of him, the Porsche goes through. But again, it's not all about chasing quick lap times at the moment, is it? It's about getting a race set up.
Well, you say that, but Dries van Thor's lap time wasn't about a race lap time.
True.
That was a lap time about out and out speed.
So different teams operating different programs in this, but the sure-footed Skechers Audi up the curb.
I mean, you can see the body language. That car is being hustled. But look 6.6 seconds down in sector 2. So what is the point? A slow out lap. And that lap was a 2:01. But he got on it as he came through the chicane and into the final turn. So maybe looking for a bit of track space to see whether he can further improve on that current provisional quickest time. 38 minutes remaining.
So it is Audi, Porsche, Ferrari, Lamborghini in the top 4. Porsche 5th, Ferrari 6th, Ferrari 7th, Lamborghini 8th, Audi 9th, and the best Mercedes is only 10th, but it's Mario Engel that's rounding out the top 10.
It's almost how fickle can these sessions become, because you get one brand, one driver, or a pairing of drivers utterly dominating one session, and then where are they in the next session? Well, currently, in the case of the 88 Mercedes, they're down in 15th place.
Let's think Ferrari for a minute. James Colado's had a good session, and James is with Gemma Scott.
James, this session seems to have been considerably improved from this morning's session. You clearly changed some setup.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've been struggling a lot. Our car doesn't suit the tyres that we have. I know it's the same for everyone, but we seem to be not heating up the tyres enough. So in free practice 1, we changed a lot, which didn't work. So we had to go back to basics, and it seems to be okay again. So I don't know what everyone else is doing, but I think we're pretty confident that we're finally back in the loop. And yeah, let the other 2 drive now, see how they feel, and then we can discuss ready for quali.
Things looking much better for later on then. Thank you very much.
I didn't hear. Did you say bye or not?
I said things are looking much better for later. So,
Thanks,
The perils of being a pit lane reporter at the moment. You've got to stand 2 metres away from your interview subject. You have to wear a mask, so does he. You can't hear each other very well, and there are noisy racing cars, 48 of them, booming past the pits all the time. So well done, Gemma. We're getting there. We're hearing from the drivers. That's all good. Chris Froggatt, you're riding with now that Ferrari 29. So it's not just the Collado car, it's AF Corse, the Ferraris in general, taking a step forward in this session.
I think that we saw that was pretty clear this morning when the Ferraris were slip-sliding around. It was notable coming out of turn 12, the back end of the car would snap. So whatever the Ferrari engineers across the board of all the entries, they've come up with something, whether it's purely mechanical or whether it's a little bit more aero into the car. The sacrifice you make with aerodynamics is you get more, or you potentially get more bite. Chris Froggatt, you're all over the place. He couldn't quite make up his mind which way to make the entry into turn 6.
Graduate of the European Ferrari Challenge, down at turn 8. Washes a little bit wide, but he gets the apex more or less. Curb on the outside, power up the hill.
I don't think this car looks as planted as possibly some of the other Ferraris might be. Mario Engel, by the way, and the Mercedes suddenly, that's back at the races. Number 4, HTP, 3rd quickest. What's Kelvin Vandalinder? I tell you what, he raced really well in Imola.
Yes, he did.
Outstanding, some really well thought, judged and executed overtakes.
But right now, that car is only 20th, so there's more to come from it. Jordan Pepper's Bentley has arrived sort of on the scene. Number 9 K-Pax Bentley, the one he shares with Andy Soucek and Alex Buncombe. But again, the Bentleys are just a bit not there, are they? They're just a little bit off the pace.
I mean, certainly back in the days of M Sport, it was quite normal for Bentley those days to run, again, a very fixed schedule. And it was only at the end of a session where you'd begin to see their out-and-out performance. It was a kind of what I would call old school way of doing it. When you had great team managers like John Wyer running Aston Martins and then Porsche 917s. This is what you're required to do, Mr. Edison. Please go out and do 6 laps and at this lap time and then come in.
And you did it.
Oh, absolutely.
Or else. Yeah.
I mean, John Wyer's nickname was Death Ray. He had a look, and it was worse than any schoolmasters.
There is the Team Parker Racing Bentley. Frank Bird, Ewan Mackay and Nikolai Kiergaard, the drivers. Wiper on. And that car, Frank Bird, recent incumbent. The Bentley Motorsport Academy car, effectively, that TPR operates on behalf of the crew company. Stuart Parker's initiative, but he's got 3 young chargers there. Nikolai Kiergaard, particularly impressive, switching from single-seaters to GT cars. And Ewan Mackay from Carrera Cup GB, GT4, in which he shot last year, and now into GT3. So those 2, very, very impressive indeed.
I was just going to say about the Bentley, but likewise here with the 87 Mercedes, it's amazing what a paint scheme, not just this is a multicoloured car, but the Bentley, you don't normally see a Bentley Continental GT3R in a very French racing blue colour. It still doesn't seem to work with the shape of the car, yet I think it's a very attractive scheme. It looks really, it stands out, which is the main thing. But I think it just lifts the car's overall look.
Fabian Barthez, the footballer, at work, and setting off down the hill. Just had Jonathan Cecotto's Lamborghini improve up to 22nd. That's having taken it over from Ricky Collard. Barthez here, switching from Lexus to Mercedes for this year and going to the ACA ASP team. Shares with Jim Pla and Thomas Drouet.
I think what will help Fabian Barthez is being in a team where he's just a driver, rather than being a part of the team, maybe a part owner of a team. So your focus is just get in the car, fab, and drive.
And he's also got Jim Pla, from whom he can gain experience and some tutelage. And Fabian Barthez, who you've seen racing in this, he's raced at Le Mans, for example, has done a lot of miles in his motor racing career. Since winning the World Cup for France, being a Manchester United goalkeeper, Fabian Barthez through the chicane, onto the power now. The motorbike version of the chicane is the one in use. You've got the tighter one that Super Trofeo and Formula Renault is using. You've got the soft version that the GT cars are operating through. So we get the occasional quick lap as we get to the final third of the session, but it's been, again, fairly calm with, touch wood, relatively few dramas.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at Fabian Barthez's lap. The car is currently 30th quickest overall. Barthez's last lap was a 1:59, I think. Yeah, it was 1:59. So not likely to get close to the 1:56 set by Jimmy Pla, which was very much earlier in the session. As we look at the McLaren, back in the pit lane.
Joe Osborne brought it in, and that car is 25th. It's not far off that Rob Bell grid position of a few years ago. But it's so competitive, the championship these days, that you do not want to be mired in the traffic, do you?
Not at all. Not at all.
Ramon Voss in the also distinctive Mercedes.
I would say that was a track limit abuse. Because the exit of turn 1, there's a variety of entries and exits to turn 1, but there's a painted line which is the demarcation line for the end of the racetrack. And how many drivers have we seen driving over that because it suits them to do so? Gets it well and truly up the curves there in turn 6.
So Remel Vos out of turn 8, 29 minutes on the clock. Just had an improvement from the Gtwc BMW Jens Klingmann at the wheel of it. That brings it up the order to 40th. Remel Vos, to be fair to him, when he came into GT racing at this level at the start of last year, it took a couple of events to get onto the real pace, but with Tom Onslow Cole as a driver coach as well as co-driver, he's learned a lot and he's learned fast. He's a much more solid-looking pedaler now.
Well, what you would like across your driver lineup is continuity. Having your professional driver like Tom Onslow Cole, and then having your co-drivers at a lower level, what you want to try and do is coach them to bring them forward, help them get more out of themselves, and likewise get more out of the race car. And to show that the way you find speed is not by trying to push, it comes in different forms in different ways. And that's where experience from a driver can help a teammate who is new to this particular discipline.
Ferrari's over the timing line as one. Sergei Sorokin is on the inside. In fact, it's a Lamborghini, isn't it?
It is a Lamborghini, yes. David. That's a Lambo.
That'll be that multicoloured thing there, which has got at the wheel of it Rob Collard. There it is. So the pack of highlighter pens, the Leo Machitsky, Sandy Mitchell, Rob Collard car, slots in behind Sergei Sorokin, whose Ferrari is 9th. Now, is that an attractive colour scheme or not?
It's interesting. It looks like it could be slightly improved upon, but again, the thing with that layout is it's distinctive.
Yeah.
Which helps identify the car when you're seeing it on a long telephoto shot coming towards you. But you know what? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the paint scheme is. If that little baby can be set on pole position, that's the best look you can have. So whether it'll be paint scheme or whether it'll be who's behind the wheel, interested to see where is Rob at the minute? The car is in 10th place on a 155.5. The last lap Rob called 159.8. So this is more as a run to prepare for what we're going to see during the 6 hours, rather than an out-and-out simulation of what might happen at about 3.5 hours' time.
Of course, for Rob, many of the circuits he's racing on this year are completely new, because although he's been a mainstay of the British Touring Car Championship for 2 decades, now coming to European circuits, they're different. Some of the tracks that British GT operates are different layouts compared to the touring car layout of UK circuits. So he's learning about new cars, new teams, sharing a car with 1 or now 2 co-drivers, and of course here, getting the mileage in, learning about new tracks all the while.
Yes, I mean, in reality, if you're a professional driver, the ability to adapt to a new circuit should not take a great deal of time. But I think when you start getting down to finding those last tenths or whatever it is of a lap, then the more experience you have, then the more likely you are to expose it.
Sure. So that is Jens Klingmann in that Boots and Chignon BMW. Other improvements are coming further down the order. Ewan Mackay for Team Parker Racing has just got up to 44th and up to 46th. Dimitrios Konstantinou, but with 26 minutes to go at the front, dare one say it's looking a bit more settled. I still can't tell you who's going to win the race, but the order is not shuffling as much as it did now.
No, and we've got 25 minutes to go, so I just wonder, looking skyward as it gets again quite dark as the clouds are beginning to roll over, just looking from our commentary position across to the pit lane over the administrative building, big black clouds rumbling in, no indication that there's rain on the track. Oh, the Porsche, look at that, aggressive on the exit. So it's time for people that might want to run the best of the rest of their Pirelli tyres, or roll the dice, if that's what they think is worth doing, and put on a fresh set to see what they think is ultimately the ultimate pace. And if they did just one flying lap on that brand new set of tyres, it could be a set of tyres that would be certainly good enough to be used for a one flying lap run on a qualifying session. Porsche all over the back of the BMW. You can sense the frustration. BM's got loads of Muller when it comes to straight line performance, backs out of it, pulls over to the side, lets the Porsche go through. Now the Porsche stands on the brakes just to go slowly through the chicane. Now pick up the throttle and start your work to go on to yet another lap.
One of the quirks of the Nurburgring weekend thus far is it's been drier so far for the real world activity than it was for the esports races we had here back in lockdown, because we managed to have a wet esports race for the AMs, didn't we? The silver drivers, the sim drivers.
Yes, we did. It was a good race.
It was excellent.
McLaren has dominated, if I remember.
That's right. Yeah. Right, Ewan Mackay for Team Parker Racing getting on with the job a little bit more, because he's just gone up another 4 places in the classification. So Ewan, whose brother Dan is a very accomplished racer, Dad Paul, former Porsche racer as well, recovering after a monster accident a few years ago, but hugely proud of his 2 lads. And Ewan Mackay, as I say, getting up the order. Right, on board in 188 Aston Martin, which is currently being hustled along by Alex West. 42nd, this car.
It would be nice to see Aston further up the grid than they are, because this is this a Pro-Am car? It is a Pro-Am car.
Yeah, Pro Aston would be good to have, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Or overall, is it?
Well, we did have last year SRO Motorsport, who did a really fantastic job, but they've withdrawn this season and looking at what they're going to do in the future. I remember going through that chicane, David, in a W125 1938, I think, or 37 Grand Prix Mercedes, right, with a centre throttle, and I pushed my foot on the left pedal. There was a centre throttle. Oops, a daisy! Whoa, get out of that one, John. £10 million worth of Mercedes-Benz Museum heritage could have gone in a nanosecond, but anyway, we got it back.
You saved it, didn't
We
you?
got it back, yeah.
Excellent.
I'll tell you what, that thing it was unreal. Changed into top gear at about 120 mile an hour. Did a racing change, of course.
Naturally.
And I thought it burnt the clutch out. Oh, I was getting a wheel spin. What was the Lambo doing? Going very wide on the exit of turn 4.
Got another Porsche moment for you to cheer about. Mathieu Jaminet has gone
good.
5th in number
Delighted to see
12.
it.
What's all this about? Oh, is that Rob Collard? Rob!
It is Rob.
Oh.
Oh, I'll tell you what, the floor of the car's not going to be very happy with that. So, a bit of a topsy moment there for Rob. There's the Emil Frey.
Yeah, that's the 14, one of the 2. So Norbert Siedler now driving this car.
Yeah, he knows Lambos as well.
Yeah. Again, graduates of one mate Porsche Racing.
So Siedler keen to get past Alexander West, Alexander or Alex, I don't know. Lights flashing. So whether West will concede ground, easy to concede ground coming into the chicane. If you want to do that, Lamborghini's backed out of it. No point in pursuing something which wasn't going to have a result, so he's backed out of it to either go into the pit lane. No, he's going to have another go, just finding a bit of racetrack, a bit of space. Not really seeing a massive amount of change. Jaminet and the Porsche was the last significant change up into 5th position. Alexander Pierguidi in the 51 car with James Collado is in 4th. Still that 32, Christopher Dries van Thor.
It's like I said a few minutes ago, you get the occasional time, and then that's it calms down again. So it's occasional improvements from occasional people.
I think what they're doing is doing a one-lap lap and establishing a time just to see where we stand, and then coming in and not doing another lap to see whether it can be improved upon. Christian Engelhardt still in 35th place. Can't quite get my head around that. Dynamic Motorsport, Matteo Caroli, Sven Muller. I mean, that car on natural, just with the talent behind the wheel, should be in the top 15 at least, if not the top 10.
I agree. Wants for nothing in terms of the drivers, and the fact that you've got a Porsche 2nd and another one 5th suggests that other teams have found something in the cars to make them work around here, but Dynamic not doing for the moment.
And just how do you explain a grid just under 20 minutes remaining? The car that dominated this morning the 88 Mercedes-Benz, currently only 17th, and we've had all three drivers in the car just doing a little bit of prep or running on whatever remaining tyres that are available to them.
Number 5 Mercedes was slow this morning, and it's only just starting to creep up the order now. Hubert Haupt has gone 42nd, but that car's still not having a great time, whereas the sister car, HRT number 4, Vincent Abril, now 3rd.
Yeah, and that's where I would assume that number 4 car ought to have been, because it's basically the black Fulton car from 2019, and here that car ought to have won the championship, but for whatever reasons it didn't.
Right, so Engelhardt's not going to improve on this lap, as you see, because the sectors are all slower. But it is qualifying to come at the end of the night, when we will start to have proper lap times offered up.
Well, you've got 3 15-minute sessions. You've got 48 cars. Who's going to sort out who can get the cleanest lap of all those 48 cars? Be a nightmare.
Good news is it's a longish lap at 5 kilometres. Kelvin Vandalinder looking on at the times. Where's his car in all of this? 21st. Rolf Eichen has brought it into the pits most recently. There is Rodrigo Baptista for K-Pax in the Bentley. 22nd.
Now that's the colour you'd imagine a Bentley would be seen in. I mean, I don't know whether it is a true British racing green or a close variation on it, but that's what everybody imagines a Bentley, a racing Bentley, should race in.
I agree. So Jordan Pepper in number 9, 24 fastest. Jordan proved to be pretty handy in esports, didn't he, as well, in the lockdown months. He's got the Porsche from GPX behind him. And what have we got left in the session? Just over 15 minutes, still to run. So the fastest car is the Audi 32 Charles Weerts behind the wheel a bit. It was driven for the time by Dries Van Thor. And it is Audi, Porsche, Mercedes, Ferrari, the top 4.
Just noticing the Bentley, well, there we see the rain is falling again, coming into turn 11, so the cloud that has been hanging over the circuit is now released. A bit more rain. Yeah, still wipers going, a load of Lambos, Bentleys, Porsche. So this is going to take a little bit of the sting out of the remaining 17 minutes.
Whoops.
Oh, look at that. Aggressive entry there by Jordan Pepper.
It was, wasn't it?
Yeah, and by the Lamborghini just ahead of it.
Now,
So-
why is everyone diving for the pits? Is this because
It's
the
rain.
weather's turned nasty?
Well, I suppose they feel that there's probably enough rain falling that it's not going to be worthwhile continuing a lap.
But they all came in with purpose. That's what I was
They did,
thinking.
and that's why I think they realised that, oops, either the rain, they're still piling in. I mean, there's not much rain that we can see above the circuit commentary booth-wise, but certainly there was a fair bit of activity going on in that run from turn 12 up to the chicane into the final turn.
I'm not sure if it gets really nasty. Gemma will let us know. Here it looks okay, doesn't it? Dennis Olsen without the wiper going.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I thought maybe just was on the screen it looked as if you could see rain, but sometimes the way the lights flare, you pick up things that really aren't what you think you're seeing. See there, I would have thought there is raining falling. Yeah, you can see the rain falling there.
Yeah, wiper on now. So
Yeah,
that part of the circuit, wetter than where we are.
Yeah. And the point will be, what's the point in going out and staying out? The point in doing it is because it could easily happen in the race. You get weather like this. And if you all dived into the pits and you're going to sit there, well, we're going to wait until it gets really, really wet before we put a set of wet tyres on. It's all about learning. Stay out, drive it. Look at the glisten, the sheen. Wow. Now that's tricky now on wet and slick weather tyres. That's tricky. That is tricky.
Oh, it is, isn't it? It's the greasy sheen, as you say, across the road. There is Dennis Olsen. What a lap time's going to be like as a result of all of this.
It's going to fall off the cliff, I tell you.
Yeah.
And the rain is beginning to fall with a little bit more contempt to the competitors. But just coming up out of the Schumacher S's into turn 11, you can see the lights picking it up on the racetrack. But you know, these conditions are conditions we could have tomorrow, and it's still not wet enough for a set of wet weather tyres. So what do? You roll the dice and stay out and deal with the risks. There's a switchover point in terms of lap times between a slick tyre in wet conditions and a wet weather tyre, which is not really, the track isn't really sufficiently wet, A, to make the tyre work, but to get it to benefit from the compounds and the tread pattern of a wet weather tyre.
So more and more ahead for the pit lane. And 14 minutes are on the clock as there is the 111 JP Motorsport Mercedes, which was driven almost exclusively by Christian Kleen this morning, but Patrick Krupinski is at the wheel of at the moment. The Polish driver, bronze graded driver, Matthias Lauda, the third driver of that car. So downhill he heads, but the pit lane getting busier all the time. But John is right in saying you could benefit from the experience of being out there, knowing how hard you can push, where the grit might be, ready for if this happens in the race tomorrow.
And the point of staying out, if I was a team manager, is it's about learning. And you could find yourself in these conditions, 10 laps to go before your natural pit stop window opens. Do you try and stay out and avoid an additional pit stop with the added risk of a driver maybe getting caught out or maybe making an error, or you bring him in and put him on a set of wet weather tyres, but then the track might dry up again quite quickly, and then you find yourself on the wrong set of tyres for the conditions, and you've got to make another pit stop even before the pit stop window could be open. And on it goes.
It's one of the fascinations of long distance races, and particularly a 6-hour race. It's far less regimented than the obvious way of doing the 3 hours, stopping on every 65 minutes, because you can play around a bit more with driver times. The weather is going to play a part potentially as well, so there's an awful lot that could shake out of that race tomorrow. Over the line goes Krupinski. Behind him is the Attempto Audi 55, I think I'm right in saying. Wrong, 66, Kim Louis Schramm. 27th he is. But if you want to go for a time, if the track were permitting it, now's your moment, because the pit lane has got more people in it than the track has on it.
Yeah, but the track conditions have fallen off the shelf, and their lap times are over 2 minutes now. So there is no gain in doing anything, even though the track itself is relatively clear of traffic.
So there, down the hill comes the number 100 Mercedes. This is the car that Alessio Lorandi is driving at the moment. We've seen Fabian Schiller in it, and it's the one that Maxi Buch will drive as well. So it's going to be a competitive car. Whether it's going to be the outright fastest Mercedes, I would rather doubt. But again, we mentioned this morning, Mercedes seems to have one real star car, the number 4 Abriel Stolz Engel entry, and then the others are a real star with a couple of very good but not necessarily outstanding drivers.
But it's still a pro car.
Yeah, indeed.
It's with Maxi Buch, I get the message. Fabian Schiller, I would go along with that. I'm not yet up to speed on what Alessio Lorandi, where his ultimate pace is compared to those other two sharing the car with him. But I think they're doing the right thing. Stay out, get the knowledge, get the experience of these conditions, because it'll give confidence.
The stewards are set to be busy again. They've been looking at lots of speeding offences over the weekend, and there are another 6 cars being looked at for speeding in the pit lane through this session. So it's still all happening. Right, so Lorandi downhill. Would you say the road is drying a little now?
Well, I think the rain stopped.
Yeah.
So if the rain stopped, then with cars on the circuit, the track will begin to dry. It was just coming up through this part of the circuit that there was a clear, wet sheen on the circuit. You could see it with headlights reflecting off the racetrack. That looks as if it's more or less returned to nearly normal dry track conditions. A little bit of caution because tire temperatures might be down a little bit. You know, if you're running curbs like that, there's not much moisture. If those curbs are truly wet, you wouldn't want to be so aggressive on your exit. It's up the hill into the chicane.
at that point it looked quite quick, didn't it? But of course it's not got the heavy braking on that configuration of the chicane than the stop-start F1 version has. But it's not going to be any improvements, it's going to be a solid lap. Lorandi over the timing line, 13th, that would keep him.
Well, it was 58, so that's a pretty reasonable lap.
And there you've got Andrew Watson behind in the Aston Martin number 159 of Garage 59.
So they're in 29th position. So best lap at a 156.3, last lap at 159.0. So I'd expect this lap to be somewhat of an improvement. Just watch and see how the Aston, the rear of the car, responds to the throttle coming out of turn 6. Looks pretty good to me. There's no nasties or nothing that's going to surprise Andrew Watson down the hill. Hard braking into turn 8. Again, getting on the throttle as early as possible to get the thrust off the turn up the hill. You can see the track, actually the racing line is now dry again because it's gone to that light shade of black or white, whatever it is.
Somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle.
Andrew Watson pressing on, isn't he? His grip is coming back to him. He's got the confidence
again. You can see the racetrack's returned. So, and it's one of those strange things when the track starts to dry, you suddenly think, well, I've got more grip than I realized I had. I'll push a bit harder.
So just under 8 minutes of the session to go. Audi top. Andrew Watson 29th for Aston Martin. But because of that recent sprinkling of rain, improvements few and far between. We have had a couple though. Frank Bird has got the Team Parker Racing Bentley up to 38th, and Nico Bastian has hauled number 44 Mercedes up the order a little bit.
So let's have a look and see. Andrew Watson comes across the line, stays 29th, but a lap 157.79, so within a second and a half of the car's best time in this session. Nigrel Molina.
Now this should be a quick car. It's been a race-winning car. Think back to Silverstone last year. It's always there or thereabouts at the front in that leading group. Nigrel Molina and Davide Rigon certainly work well together. New co-driver in Sergei Sorokin, the Russian element for the SMP Racing backing, of course, this year.
All looks really nice and neat and tidy coming through turn 3 and turn 4. Down the hill, turn 5 falls away from you, then a very short sprint into turn 6. Easy to overrun the apex. But, I mean, looking at that, you'd have to say it looks a tidy lap to date.
But is it quick?
Let's have a look and see. Nothing on timing and scoring that's going to make you think the world's about to change for Molina.
No, he's down in the first sector. Hustles on through the Schumacher S, climbs the brow.
There's something about the front end appearance of a Ferrari that always looks racy. You used to have that sort of egg carton type grille, which I used to think was fantastic, especially on the sports cars of the 50s and the old school sports cars, the 250 TFs and other incarnations that were developed by Maranello.
Well, Miguel is going to find himself on the next lap in traffic, isn't he? Because
no, he's not. He's got the pit lane.
He's going to bail. Good lad. Get out of the traffic.
Yeah, there's no point. Only 5 minutes remaining. So Johnny Adams improved up to 38th. So that's something that.
Yeah, I think GPX might be going out again. Cars dropped down.
I would say there we are. There we go.
Back onto slicks.
Change of rubber.
And if they're new slicks, get them rubbered in, get them scrubbed in, ready for qualifying.
No, those are not new ones, but they might be better than the ones that are currently on the car.
Bentley 108 of CMR is driven at the moment by Stefan Tribodini, and it is 42nd, this car.
The wind's also picked up. Look at the flags in the background. So that was something that's changed as well. That's blowing the weather in and out and contributing to the track conditions returning to virtually, I would say now, as a if you want to go out and do a lap time and you want to throw a set of tyres in these remaining 4.5 minutes, it's probably a good time to do it. It'll be a vanity lap, but it'll also teach you something.
Absolutely. So the track has got busier again, hasn't it, now that that bit of rain has passed through. Tribodini hustles on out of the S's. And Nico Bastian, another couple of places gained in the times, up to 38th now ahead of Johnny Adams. So the number 44 Mercedes, when Nico is driving it, is quick. It's just not that his pace can be matched by his co-drivers.
That's a great shame, because I think I've always felt that Nico Bastian is a driver that got shed loads of ability and you know, partnered with comparable talent. You know, that's got to be a car that's going to look to score success, score victories.
Another car being looked at for speeding in the pit lane is the McLaren of Joe Osborne, Ollie Wilkinson and Rob Bell. The Lexus team pretty happy with life. Tech 1 Racing, Thomas Neubauer, Timothée Bure, Aurélien Panis. A car that's 20th out of the 48 from this session. Door closes on number 5 Mercedes.
Why is having a little look as the hand goes up around the left rear? Is there something that needs attention? Or no, it's going into the garage, so it's run for this session is over, only just under 3 minutes remaining. So is that the number 5 car going in? It is.
It is, yeah. Which has had a pretty troubled day, because you know, Joel Comethius has just got out of it, and it's still 46.
Yeah.
It's never really come alight all day, that car.
No, it's not. I mean, that's not what I'd expect to see. Likewise, Bentley 108. That's time to pack up. So CMR Bentley has gone back and
so Stefan Tribodini brought the car in, and that car was 44th.
looks like he's got a conrod attached to his helmet, doesn't it?
Yes, correct.
For the multitude of radios and hoses and drinks bottles, and I don't think helmets were designed to carry all those accoutrements, but there we are.
Such is the modern age, John.
Yeah.
Such is the modern way. Right, 1 minute and 3/4 just over to go.
Driver change coming up here.
Yeah, it'll be a practice pit stop, won't it? Just for the end of the session.
It's at 107.
It's like Nelson Panciucci to take it over. Panciucci jumps in, replacing Seb Morris. But the flag will be out shortly, and then of course the teams have about 4 hours, just under, to get ready for the 3-part qualifying session that will determine the grid. There's a car we've not seen too much
of. No, I was going to say, I
but
haven't seen much of that at all.
Yeah.
How about Jürgen Haring,
Alfred Renauer at the wheel.
Constant,
Dimitris Konstantinos.
Dimitros Konstantino.
He is the third driver of the car that the Renault family operates through the Herberth Motorsport banner, and the flag will greet them probably at the end of this lap. That car is 43rd, Alfred Renauer at the wheel of it. Jürgen Haring, we've seen over the last few years in the GT Sports Club under his pseudonym of Edward Lewis Browner, but now under his real name, going into GT3. Behind it
There's the Lambo.
Yeah, Sandy Mitchell back at the wheel of it, and Renault has backed out of the lap, so I think he's going to pit at the end or bail from this.
There's no point, you might as well come in because there's only 18 seconds remaining.
Yeah.
So you barely would get across the start-finish line before the flag comes out, so I would just drive it in the pit lane myself. But clearly, what do I know? What do I know?
He's going for one last go. The flag's going to greet him. He's going to run out of time to even start the lap, isn't he?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, all they can do is...
Yeah.
And even the Lambo, I think, probably missed the start of a final lap. So
There we are. Well, I'll say it again, the two sessions we've had today have been remarkably calm, haven't they?
Yeah, and also probably inconclusive, because there's no consistency or continuity about which car, driver, team, package is dominant. Just other than an out-and-out pace, the 88 Mercedes is the quickest car so far this weekend.
That's the Fabian Schiller Mercedes, which ends the session where 13th. Alessio Lorandi at the wheel, bringing it home. So the flag out, the session at an end, and only perhaps at the end of the evening, once we've had qualifying, will we get a proper idea of who's quick, what the grid might look like, and of course where a race-winning car might come from. 6 hours, so much more can happen, so many more things can bite you, can't we?
It's a long way, and it's not a demanding circuit, not a difficult circuit, but it's a circuit where you need to pay a great deal of care and attention because you've got so many cars always going to be in and around you. So, as is often the case at Nurburgring, this race will be influenced, put it that way, by the ability of your pit crew to think on their feet, to know when the best time or the right time to bring your car in, not just to bring it in, but also where it will fall back into the field when you release it. So I would imagine the people that are going to do the most brain-scratching, head-scratching are going to be your pit crews trying to figure all that out. The driving bit is physical, but all you have to do is just be sensible, not look at stupid overtakes and things that are impossible because of frustration.
Well, tomorrow's forecast says for the race that it will be dry all day. Now, whether you believe that in this part of the world is your choice, but it's meant to be dry all day.
It would be nice if it was dry all day, but always, usually the best races come when you've got mixed and unpredictable conditions. But teams want continuity and consistency. The viewers want something which is unpredictable.
Yeah, true. So it has been a free practice and then pre-qualifying day thus far. Qualifying yet to come this evening. Fastest at the end of the session, Audi, thanks to the efforts of Dries Van Thorp. Christopher Mies and Charles Weir share the car with him. Thomas Preining did the time in the second placed Porsche. Dennis Olsen, Romain Dumas share, and then it was a Lukas Stoltz time backed up by Mauro Engel and Vincent Abril, third for Mercedes. Then Ferrari, Porsche, Audi, Porsche, Porsche, Ferrari, Ferrari, Porsche, Audi, Mercedes, Lamborghini, 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 taking you down to 16th. The best of the classes throughout all of that. We had Pro-Am being topped by Nick Homerson, Louis Machiels and Andrea Bertolini. It was the dynamic number 56 Porsche that headed the Silver Cup in the end, and the best of the AMs, well, we're moderately short on them in terms of number this weekend, but the 108 Bentley of CMR doing the job. So, as the teams now get themselves set for the qualifying session, you can look at the margins between them. We're talking hundreds between individual cars, and the top 20 on the grid covered by 0.999 of a second. So 20 cars within 1 second of one another, which ain't bad going on a 5-kilometre long lap. At the very bottom of the order, the Santilloc Audi of Pierre-Yves Pack, Clement Zeiler and Michel Blanchemin. But he's not going to be concerned about that number 5 Mercedes, which has not hauled itself out of the bottom end of the 40s in either that session nor free practice earlier on. Quick look back at what happened in that 90-minute pre-qualifying session. Number 74, the Tom Onslow Cole, Raymond Vos and Martin Conrad Mercedes out on track, with the KCMG Porsche having a bit of a moment, rattling its way over the gravel at the Schumacher S. The Lexus into the pit lane, having had an off through the gravel in free practice. Number 5 Mercedes was doing the laps, but still with a problem. So a lot of work going on that car. Still did 37 laps in the session. The KCMG Porsche, after its gravelly moment, pitted. And Eddie Cheever at the wheel of the Ferrari was pressing on regardless. Off the road went Raffaele Marciello. Slithered his way back onto the circuit as Fabian Barthez lost track position to Patrick Kujala, who was on a mission for Barwell. Another moment, this was 188 Aston Martin getting it wrong coming up the hill. And the Butson-Gignon BMW, the sole BMW on the grid. Another car with Jens Klingmann at the wheel that was finding time late in the session. Rob Collard had a big lose coming out of the chicane, and around he went. Thankfully without getting anybody else involved. But Audi, thanks to the efforts of Dries van Thor, topped the times at the end of pre-qualifying, and the grid-deciding qualifying session is to come a little bit later on. Pre-qualifying is done. Attention now to that qualifying session coming up in a few hours' time. We'll see you for that later on in the day. For now, it's goodbye from the Nurburgring.